commission, I was a 6-1 Delta, a physicist in the Air Force. And yeah, as you notice, that the Space Force does not have that. So when I jumped over to the Air Force, now Space Force, I had to recore into a 6-3A kind of AFS, well, SFC, I guess we call them as. But mostly I've been doing a lot of program management work before that, so it wasn't really. But yeah, that here at Kirkland Air Force Base, we also have Air Force Research Lab Space Vehicles Directorate. So yeah, a lot of Air Force kind of, like you say, research done by Air Force, but space for space. So yeah, that is something that, again, for kind of reasons, political reasons, at the time, the Space Force did not create or transfer over any of the 6-1s. We all had to recore either to a 6-2E or to a 6-3A, but we still need them. We still need some of that expertise, so it is going to be interesting. So yeah, I understand the kind of the dilemma that you're in. So yeah, okay.
Our progression to go up for Space Board is a little bit complicated. I'm someone who's on the edge. I've been told a lot to go into the Space Force, but for cadets, they have to be interviewed before they get their space EAs, I believe, and all of that.
Yeah, I was a little, I don't know if lucky's the right word, because when we were standing up the Space Force, I already had 10 plus years almost 15 years in the Air Force, but all of my career, all my OPRs, everything said space in it. So it was a relatively simple decision on both my part, as well as I think the Space Force. Now that we've hit our quotas, I have noticed it being a little bit more selective, which again, there's some pros and cons of that for the Space Force to kind of look at who's coming in and is that the right person with the right background.
That's actually a beautiful transition into one of our questions. And is there any specific programs or internships cadets can get into before going to that space commission or boosting their chances for that?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that are designed for that. Again, when you apply, I think it will be a package will go forward to a board that will look at your experience and background, and then I think you write something that like a justification, some few words or whatnot, and then so again, anything kind of space related is probably a good thing. I'm not quite sure with your guys' school. With AFRL, there is a program called the University Nanosat Program, UNP, where the school, and I don't know which department, but within the school, like a team, they'll form a team and they'll actually design, develop, and build an actual satellite. Now, again, it's always there, and then operate it after it gets launched. Now, it's always a kind of a easier said than done thing, but just showing that, like, hey, the interest and whatnot. But for the most part, because as you see, working with Del 13 and Starcom, Space Force itself doesn't really have that good established mechanism there through. So kind of leveraging ROTC and everything. That's kind of the best we have. So that's kind of a roundabout answer of saying no specifically, but again, showing and then writing everything down of the interest and why you think you're going to be a good fit in the Space Force. That's probably a good start.
Yeah, because most cadets really, it's just for that interview of just talking about what type of stuff they've been involved with space-wise. I know, Khan, you've gone through that interview. Can you give some insight on that?
It was, I believe, 5 or 6 questions regarding mainly scenario-based questions on scenarios that cadets might have encountered, and as well as fictitious scenarios, and asking how they would respond to that to kind of get a look on their leadership style, as well as a couple of questions on what you've done to prepare to be in the Space Force, but they're quite vague and open-ended.
Yeah, because again, at the end of the day, the Space Force, we have to be cognizant of the fact that the number of opportunities at college, at the college level, and then it's even worse at the high school level, to get quote unquote space experience is extremely limited. So it's not something that everybody has access to. So we really can't hold that against somebody. That again, I throw out the University NanoSat program, but that's not across all. It's not across all schools. That there's not an equal opportunity to participate in it. So those who get in get really good knowledge, get a really good experience, but those who, again, it's not your fault that your school doesn't participate in it. So that's something that I would believe the board would have to take into account. Again, always looking at, especially on the officer side, and I think the same would go with the Air Force. It's not just I want to be a guardian and I want to work on space things. As an officer, you are that leader. So a part of that kind of, again, you kind of called it the more vague, generalized leadership aspects. That is something that the Space Force wants to grow, as well as to recruit. And there will be, in the Air Force or the Space Force or any of the military services, if you come in, even as enlisted, but as you come into as a commissioned officer, you will have many opportunities to be that leader, to grow those leadership experiences and those skills, as well as to go to like schools and learn kind of the theory of leadership and what that means. So I wouldn't really worry too much about that, but those are kind of aspects and themes, I guess, in a person that we would look for. I'm not too surprised on that.
And just in terms of cadets who still are on the edge of just deciding whether Air Force or Space Force, especially freshmen, what career fields would you boast out there to tell cadets that are available? Because for someone like me, I was just absolutely confused on, what was offered until I got into I-5 curriculum. However, most cadets, I definitely know that there is some stuff they probably actually want to do that they aren't aware of.
Yeah, so the big buckets, especially on the commission side, you will have space operations, acquisitions and engineering. That's kind of a single bucket. Cyber, but it's really cyber for space, but it's also that bleeds into other kinds of cybers, and then intelligence and in the intel field. And again, kind of intel for space and space and our activities, but again, kind of bleeds across the other pieces of intel, and again, that is a very, very big community out there. So within those kind of big buckets, it's all the specific missions that you could read about. For space operations, that's, the command and controlling of the satellites themselves. So every day, you're the one making the contacts, getting up on the satellites, taking down the data, seeing how it is, making sure it's still good, loading that mission, what it's supposed to do the next day, tasking it to do specific things according to its whatever its like mission area is, and again, that's like missile warning, GPS, the military communications, MilSatCom, those are kind of the big ones, and then of course there's always the ubiquitous classified cool stuff that you really can't talk about until you're actually doing it, which I always think is the cool stuff in there. And so yeah, you could read about some of these missions online and in publications of what that is. But again, as a career field, you'd be the ones actually doing that work, talking to that satellite, making the plans for whatever kind of support to ground operations or whatnot. So that's a lot of on the ops side. And again, there's some specialities and working with the Joint Force. In all the you'll hear about air operation centers, AOCs, that really control the air, like the AOR and all the air ops going on. I think in every single one, I'd be very surprised if there wasn't, but there's always a little space cell tucked in somewhere that coordinates space support for those air operations in that. And you have to do that with air operations, with ground operations, with sea operations, and really the expertise from the as being a guardian, you'd have those kind of open door, those kind of opportunities. On the acquisition and engineering side, which again, that's where I've been doing a lot of my career, that's really acquiring the space systems themselves. And what do I mean by acquiring? It's not just going out and buying something, because more often than not, this stuff just does not exist until we start making it. And so finding those key technologies, what's that secret sauce that we need this satellite to do, and making an experiment, making a prototype, and kind of proving the proof of concept of that secret sauce. Yeah, we can do that. This is what it means to actually, from the words of, I need this thing to do this kind of effect. Well, how that thing actually does that effect, it can be very, very technical, as you can imagine. So making it an actual system that does that, and you do, your one-off prototypes, where it's okay, now we need to scale it up to something big, what we call the programs of record. Again, it's the difference between an X-plane in the Air Force that again demonstrates some new advanced capability, and then a product line like the F-35 and the F-22. Again, we have to manage those, all of that through operations and sustainment, just like the air, ground, and sea. Again, it's different for space. So understanding what that is, and that's really on the acquisitions, and again, engineering, getting into those very, very technical weeds of exactly how this thing actually does that. I have less experience, but I kind of know what the other, again, the cyber, if you could think about it, all satellites are computers. And between the satellite and the ground system, you have computers talking to computers. And, very basic, but also at the same time, very complex networks. And just like every other computerized network on this planet, there's a lot of vulnerabilities to the cyber game. So we need people to be going on those networks and securing those networks, whether they're on the ground or in space itself. And so a lot of those opportunities are in that cyber bucket. And then finally, that intel side, again, working with the rest of the intelligence community across the entire government and with our allies, is understanding where our adversaries, both in their space capabilities, for them to use space, and their counter space capabilities of them trying to deny us space and understanding, okay, what is that threat out there? What does it mean to use some of these systems in a conflict when someone wants to keep you from using these systems in a conflict? And so, again, it's working with the rest of the intelligence community to understand what that threat is, and then to bring that information back to everybody else so that we can start planning against it. And again, there are all these one-offs like launch. Again, everything is in space, has to get to space. How do you get? Well, yeah, you got to launch. You got to launch these giant rockets from one of our launch bases, and there's so much stuff that goes into that. And of course, you know, as a career field, you'd be one of the people making that happen. That's how I started my career in launch out at Vandenberg. Back then, Air Force. I think it's a Space Force based now in California. I've also worked at Cape Canaveral doing launch out there in Florida as well.
Yeah, after hearing that, every time I hear information on Space Force, I get more and more tempted of just thinking, how do I get into this branch? Especially now, because I want to go cyber, and just hearing that with satellites, that's the biggest thing that interests me. And
oh, yeah. Yeah, and I would say cyber is, I mean, again, when you look at it on the, and you talk to a lot of different people, but my personal point of view is when you look at the spectrum of warfare from like peacetime to on one end of the spectrum, everything's great, no one's mad at each other, to like nuclear war on the other end of the spectrum. One of the things that we and our adversaries, we don't really go kinetic that often, but we will go cyber on everybody all the time, and everybody goes cyber on us all the time. So that's one of the more active, from my perspectives, of, hey, if you want to actually, you know, do something on a day-to-day basis that in my opinion, again, makes a real impact, yeah, cyber would be a good opportunity to do that.
Oh, sir, you mentioned working at Vandenberg. Back December, I had the privilege to visit the 2nd Space Launch Squadron through I-5.
Yep.
And I got to meet some of the LTs there doing the space launch, like quality assurance with the contractors. I was wondering if you could talk more about the role of a 6X, I guess, within the launch job role.
Yeah. So again, and you probably saw it, and hopefully the second SOF, I actually worked on the range, the 2-ROP side. Hopefully they pointed them out when you were out there. But again, you look at it, and it's interesting because the Air Force and now Space Force, but Air Force never really, we never really built our own rockets. We never have. It's always a company. And in the kind of the history, it was always Lockheed Martin's, the Boeings, these defense contractors. Lately, it's been SpaceX. They've been great in the last 10 years, have really come on. And now new companies like Blue Origin and Relativity and Rocket Lab and a couple others that I'm working with right now to launch stuff. Again, it's smart people doing it, but inherently dangerous and inherently risky. And so, again, that we're going hand in hand with an industry partner to say, okay, we built this rocket, and they said we built this rocket, and then we said, yeah, and we were with you every step of the way, or some of the steps of the way. It's always kind of a spectrum, and we're making sure that you guys are doing it right. You're doing what needs it, and again, because on the national security side, the risk of failure, especially on some of these systems, they're too important to kind of roll the dice with. And so, again, it's inherently risky. So whatever we can do to kind of lower that risk and to make sure, we're all good, We've got all the PhDs together. We've looked at all this, the bolt diagram. We've looked at the models of the stresses and blah, 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 across everything. We've done about everything we can to make sure that this, and then, so when it's time to actually launch, that the probability of success is as high as we can possibly make it. And then again, what does that mean onto a day-to-day at a launch base like Vandenberg, like Cape Canaveral, which is kind of like, when you think about it, like a spaceport, airport kind of analogy, is that you're checking out all the planes, you're checking all that out, all that kind of operations on a day-to-day to just keep it going, to keep the rockets and to keep the satellites getting to where they need to get to do the mission that they need to do. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
So now we'll transition into how actual Space Force culture is like.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting, my answer that I give you. So there is a definite distinction between your commissioning source, whether it's ROTC, the Academy, or OTS, and active duty. And once you're active duty, and once you got your butter bars on, that you're a commissioned officer, there is definitely a difference there. And the level of expectation and leadership and all that, everything comes with that. But it's a good time, and it's a really fun time in my perspective. Now, the Space Force, and where we are, because you look at us, and we're only about 5 years old, give or take. The vast majority of us came from the Air Force, myself included. And again, I was Air Force for 15 years before I became Space Force. And everybody, or again, not everybody, but the vast majority of people above us, or above me, who are all the general officers now and all our senior leadership, they were in the Air Force even longer. So when I look at our culture, we really do have a lot of Air Force culture to us. We use Air Force slang. We mostly wear Air Force uniforms still. You do see a couple people in the Space Force uniform. But a lot of it is carryover from Air Force. Now, where this is going to be interesting, and again, from my point of view, it's great, is that if new accessions, new people like yourself come into the Space Force, you have no history of what the Air Force was ever like. And so really the cultures between Air Force and Space Force are starting to diverge from each other. And really, I see it at the lower levels more than the higher levels. Because again, we're kind of, some of our thinking and some of our, the lexicon and all that are kind of Air Force. But as you come in as Space Force, and you come in as a lieutenant within like 4 or 5 years, the percentage of those who never knew the Air Force keeps rising. And the percentage of ex-Air Force people keeps going down. And with that builds the culture. That really shapes the culture. One of the things that I've always talked to with my peers, and again, people that came with me from the Air Force, is that, again, with the Air Force culture, the Air Force way of doing business because of, decades of doing it like that. With the Space Force, we have an opportunity as Guardians to not just do what was done for the sake that that's the way it's always been. And so for everything, again, looking at our uniforms, looking at the day-to-day of how we carry ourselves and the customs and courtesies, all the protocol, all that kind of fun stuff that comes with being in the military, we can ask ourselves why. Why are we doing this stuff? Do we really want to do these things? Does that really shape our ethos, so to speak? Or do we want to diverge from the Air Force because we want to do something different? Again, one of the, I think a good thing that not just getting Air Force people, but getting some Army, getting some Navy air service transfers, and having them bring in a little bit of their culture into the Space Force. So it's not all just Air Force culture, that we get some Army and Navy kind of thinking. And then again, all those kind of gets, all these kind of thoughts and culture kind of get thrown into a pot and kind of bubbles and boils together, and then we start seeing this what we call Space Force culture start to emerge. And again, you can read online. Our Chief of Space Operations, General Saltzman, who is our service chief, our number one, he publishes all the time about what does it mean to be a guardian, and what does it mean for space to be a warfighting domain, and what kind of, the thinking and culture that we need to adapt to rise to the occasion, that when the next big, and not even big, but when the next conflict comes, that we are able to do what we need to do so that our country can leverage space as that warfighting domain.
For me personally, it was at field training when I realized, in my opinion, I truly believe this, and a lot of people still think that this is not true, but I truly believe the Space Force is the most important branch, especially going down the line in the future. We're lucky to be in a generation where we're pioneers, really, of what's going to be really great down the line.
Even just within I-5, we have about 1,000 members now across the Academy, Air Force ROTC, as well as West Point and Annapolis. I've noticed the culture of people wanting to not just change, but mold the Space Force into what it will be. Now we're seeing the expansion into Space Futures Command, and undoubtedly there's going to be more expansions up in the future. I was wondering, sir, what your thoughts are on space going from a support domain into, I guess, actual warfighting within space.
I've thought about this a lot over the years. Yeah, so you'll learn about the support kid and the support team. And again, they're not wrong when they say that space generally in the past has been support team. That either the air operations or the ground operations or the naval the maritime operations. Again, and when you look at it, you take a step back. All operations that the United States does is joint and inherently almost coalition too. So we can't forget about our allies and partners and other government agencies that we work with. But if you want to look at the DoD, it's virtually every single operation is joint with parts and pieces from other aspects and other services intermixed, so that we can all play to our strengths and accomplish that objective, whatever that particular commander needs for that particular scenario. And for the most part, a lot of that has been underpinned by space capabilities. Again, the most one of the obvious examples that we throw around is GPS, secure SATCOM. That's another big one, and there are other things. And again, it's been supporting other people. But as you look to the future, that not only us, but the adversary has noticed all this, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's how the Americans are so good at what they do. It's because they have this thing called space that they're using. We need some of that." And so the adversaries are going to space because we went to space and see the goodness that comes out of it. And so now we have space on space because, again, all things considered equal, during that operation, wherever it is, they're going to want to deny us use of space, and we're going to want to deny them use of space. We're going to try and protect our stuff from them, and they're going to protect their stuff from us. And so when you look at that, that's where you look at space as a war-fighting domain that would be in space itself. And then at that point, space becomes the supported commander, where maybe some ground forces, air forces, maritime forces, maybe you could do something down on the ground that could help us up in space to, again, either protect our stuff or get rid of some of the bad guy stuff, or, a little bit of combination of the two, so to speak. And then that's where, again, space kind of, as that warfighting domain, to do the operations there, again, it's different, but not really. And I say not really because, again, the joint force, the U.S. has a good history of developing how a joint force fights. And who, again, it's whatever that supported commander and the supporting commanders, those are good relationships. And people kind of understand what it means to plan a mission like that, and who's in command, who's got, all that good stuff. It's really been like we've been answering the call to other people. Now they're just going to be answering the call to us when we target. But again, in a very likely scenario, it's not just going to be in space. Other things are going to be going around, so it really will be that joint fight. And when we're conducting operations in space as a warfighting domain, you can imagine there will be operations on the sea as a warfighting domain, in the air, on the ground, all over, in cyber. It's going to be all over the place. And so having each piece and each commander being able to talk and support each other, that's going to be key. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So I would transition into some cadet questions that we got that they would like to know personally. And one of them was, as an officer in the Space Force, what's the most challenging part about it, especially that it's so recent?
Well, yeah, so that is, there's a lot of change. And how to, not only you as a person deal with the change, but you as a leader help other people through that change. That can be challenging at times. Again, a lot of it, my biggest challenges are not because I'm a Space Force guardian. It's because I'm a lieutenant colonel, and I have a organization that I lead of people and dealing with people's problems, both at a personal level and a professional level. That's always a challenge. Again, UCMJ discipline stuff, that sucks to do, but it's important. So again, those are the kind of the big challenges, and it's not because I'm a Space Force. It's because I'm an 05. The Space Force stuff, again, I'd say one of the biggest challenges when it comes to the Space Force is helping people understand. Because again, and this will be a challenge if you become a guardian that you'll have to deal with your entire career, and not just other people, but yourself as well, and your families and all that. What I mean by that is, for the Air Force, for the Navy, for the Army, you can go see what an aircraft carrier looks like. You can go see what a Abrams battle tank looks like. You can go see what an F-22, F-35 looks like. You can go and touch those things. You can walk around them. You can understand, okay, I have a concept. I can watch, the latest Top Gun and see what, all that fun stuff. I understand some kind of semblance of when someone says, doing an air operation. Okay, what does that look like in my mind when I close my eyes? Space is inherently abstract because of it. Very, very few, i.e., astronauts, outside of astronauts, no one really sees a satellite in space. No one really sees it doing its job, but it does its job. So, and again, outside of launches, and that's why launch is also a kind of a unique thing. You don't get to see that mission being accomplished. You get to see a lot of the results of that mission. You get to see a lot of the data and the decisions that get made off that mission, but you can't see, you can't walk on that aircraft carrier and watch an F-18 or whatever land, so to speak. So that would be a challenge. I guess that's a challenge for the Space Force, so that you're always kind of sort of talking in the abstract. Again, and that's one thing if you in the acquisitions and engineering, that as you lead the development, you can watch them build the satellite. You can see the satellite. Okay, that's, and you walk up to it and you see the size and you're like, oh, this thing's pretty big, or oh, this thing's not that big. And so you've got that. But again, when it comes time and it gets launched and it's out there in the void, hundreds, if not tens of thousands, 20,000, 40,000, I forget how far GEO is out, where it's doing its job, you'll never see it. And if you do from like a telescope or something, it's just a little dot. So you don't really get to see it actually doing its thing. But you do get to see so it's kind of that indirect piece of it that you get to see, but not its actual thing. So having that concept of what exactly your system or whatnot, in your head as you're trying to do your job is also, it's kind of fun, but it can be challenging. And again, cyber is probably the same way. Yeah. You can't see computer code, but you can see, it like the after effects on
just how it works.
Sir, you mentioned how classified spaces, and especially compared to other domains, and obviously that comes with some challenges from, I guess, explaining the role of the Space Force to the layman, or sharing intel with partner nations, or even acquisition and sustainment, and having legacy systems. I was wondering how you see the Space Force navigating the level of classification moving forward.
Oh, yeah, and that's a challenge that we've lived with practically from the very beginning, back in the 50s and 60s, that space, because of its sensitive nature, both, and again, like these systems that we use, the satellites themselves, physically are very, very sensitive. And so you have to be careful, and the inherent offensive nature in space, where to really kill a satellite, you just need a handful of gravel and to throw it at it. So again, we got to protect everything, and we got to protect all our secrets, and we got to protect all the technology, because it's very cutting edge, and it takes sometimes a long time to actually get these things to do what we think they're going to do. So there are a lot of policies in place, and that's where that classification comes in. That we say, hey, we got to protect this information because it's the secret sauce that our country really depends on in kind of a complex scenario. So so we've got to protect it from other people, because if other people know about it, then they'll figure out a way to stop it. Because again, it's usually kind of easy to stop things in space. But again, that street goes both ways. And so the security part becomes a challenge. And again, as you talk about it, to the layman, to your family, again, talking to your parents about what you do when you were classified. But this isn't like, it's not just space. Other domains have classified operations, classified systems, acquisitions, and all that. So no matter what branch, if you join the military, you'll probably come up against this once or twice in your career. And that's just it's just a challenge. But you work with the security community to understand, okay, we needed to protect these details of this widget, whatever it is. well, what can we talk about? Oh, well, you can talk about A, you can talk about B, you can talk about C, but do not talk about D or E or F. And so it's really building that plan where again, we want to talk about all the good stuff that we're doing, the A, the B, the C. That's great stuff. That's showing the taxpayer, like, hey, the taxpayer dollars and the trust that you put into the United States Space Force, we're doing good stuff with your money. We're doing good things to protect the country. We've got to be able to talk about that in some form or fashion to show a level of transparency to the public. That is very important. But again, we got to protect that secret sauce. So again, it's a challenge that you go through, that you'll learn. It's a challenge I've been living with for, again, 15 plus years. About 15. I really didn't deal with too much when I first started. But you just do it. You just do it. I guess you just get used to it. I don't know. That's kind of as someone who's lived a life. Hopefully that answers.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that was a great answer to the question. Thank you.
Yep. All right. What else? Anything else?
We've seen a lot of commercial technology being used by the Space Force, as well as a lot of like labs and accelerators and stuff like that set up, not just for the classification, but also for, I guess, to speed up acquisition.
Yep.
And currently there's a lot of talk in the government about the acquisition system. I was wondering if you had any comments on how space acquisition, I guess, is different than, say, Air Force programs.
I can talk about this for days. All right, so the biggest difference between space acquisitions and air or ground or even sea acquisitions is you can land a plane. You could bring a tank in. You could bring a ship back to harbor. You cannot do that with space. We have to get it right when it launches, because once it goes up, it does not come back. And so, again, that's where it becomes diving into like the super, super technical to just, details of working every little, minutia and detail, because it's got to be right. It's got to live. And, oh, by the way, let's say nothing about the space environment itself is super, super harsh on these systems. And it wants to, the space itself kills everything aggressively. Just being up there in the radiation environment, all the computer and electronics, it is not a friendly place to be. So it's challenging, and there's a very low margin of error because it's got to work. And so, we do have a bad rap, but it's earned, and a legacy of being kind of slow. And just like everything else, the world is moving around us. Things are changing, and we have to speed up. We have to adapt to meet this. You look at the commercial marketplace and commercial space. With commercial companies, they have a lot of good people and a lot of great ideas that we kind of want to use. And that company that's making that space thing, whatever it is, to make money, the Space Force and the DoD looks at it like, wow, that could support our national security objectives. How do we leverage that? Again, these guys have already built it, and these guys are designing it. Why do I need to come and copy their note, and redo what? Why don't we just buy what they've done and tweak it a little bit? Or we may not even have to tweak it at all. We can just leverage what they're doing, and that's generally cheaper and faster. It's not always, but generally. And so you see a lot of that. You'll see a lot of it in the press. You'll see a lot of leadership and I'd say Congress wants that because again, it's good for the jobs of those companies and the districts that those companies exist in. That's always fun. But yeah, so leveraging the commercials because if it can do the job and it can support national security, why not? Now again, more often than not, we have a little bit more needs. Well, actually, you'll hear the word requirements. So sometimes we got to sprinkle a little bit of extra stuff on top of a commercial thing, widget, space capability. But sometimes we don't. Sometimes we'll just use it, and maybe not even use it, like have the commercial company use it. We just get their data. We just get their products. You'll see a lot of that now. Again, remote sensing and a lot of commercial companies taking a lot of pictures from space, and sometimes those pictures are good enough for ground operations or whatnot. So it's like, okay, we don't need a super secret squirrel satellite to take that. We'll just buy that picture and use that picture. And so again, it's not always, but it's a spectrum. And so we go and kind of play to industry strengths. Again, they're kind of faster by necessity because, you always got your competition who's looking to kill you in that way. So you got to be fast to the market. You got to be generating revenue, all that kind of fun stuff that the DoD and Space Force can leverage when it suits us. So hopefully that answers that kind of line. It's good, but again, it's not perfect, but it's something that we can use, something we should be using.
Yes, sir. That answered my question. Thank you again.
Definitely expect to learn new things every day. You come into the office. I still come into the office. I'm constantly learning new things about space and about my job and about leadership and about myself and my people. So it's not really specific to Space Force. But
that's one thing that we're definitely looking forward to, just learning the unknown that's really just not known. Honestly, that's the best way to put it. Just learning the unknown.
Yeah, that's kind of like, when you look at it, we didn't really talk about it, but Space Force is small. Mm-hmm. We're like on the military side, we're less than 10,000 or right around 10,000. That is so small compared to even the Marines, who are small compared to the Air Force and the Navy, and then the Army is just huge, like hundreds of thousands, almost millions. So again, to support a 10,000 strong, it's like, if we put a ROTC detachment at every other school or every school, that'd be bigger than the Space Force almost.
That is true.
There's probably, I don't know, that'd be, look up how many cadets are in ROTC right now,